The following is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
What's up, besties? This is episode 65 of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdez, and I am still the second part of that title. I'm so excited about today's episode. Today's episode is Matthew Broussard. Matthew is a comedian and writer. He has done stand-up on The Tonight Show, Conan, Comedy Central, and he's been on Jeff Ross Presents Roast Battle. Matthew is truly one of my favorite stand-ups and one of my favorite writers working today, and it was such a pleasure to get to talk to him and find out more about his journey. I really think that you guys are going to enjoy this episode, so without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Matthew Broussard. Before we started, that it's like a huge honor for you to be here for me.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Wow. But I want to start from the very beginning. Where did you grow up, Matt?
I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas. So I lived there from ages 3 to 13.
And then where'd you move on from there?
To Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. Was it because of your parents' work or?
My dad retired and my mom didn't want to live in Corpus Christi anymore. She hated it. They were in New Jersey before. She loved the Northeast. And Atlanta seemed like a good place to move. Her sister lived there. And it was, my family was doing okay when we moved to Corpus. But by the time we left, my dad had made a lot of money and saved a lot of money so we could kind of upgrade our living.
Yeah.
We moved up a rung. I went from a public school in Corpus to a private school in Atlanta, which was a shift in gears.
I'm sure. Was it private in the sense of religious or just private in the sense of like
it was like as broadly Christian as it could be, but sure. The generational wealth was one of the most notable things to me because Corpus Christi is such when you live there, you forget that it's a small town,
right?
Effectively. And when you go to a place like Atlanta, it's the culture was very different. There was a lot less diversity, and it caught me off guard in a way that took me. It still took a while to adjust to. I didn't realize that those high school movies you see where the quarterbacks and the cheerleaders all date and the nerds get shoved in lockers. I didn't realize that was a real thing. I thought that was just in movies, and then I moved to Atlanta.
Yeah,
got to witness that.
Yeah, and speaking of which, what kind of kid were you in school? Like, who did you sit with at the lunch table?
I didn't have many friends. That was the thing of like, I just didn't. In Corpus, I had my group of friends. It was so small that there wasn't really cliques as much. I liked the theater kids. My best friend was a theater kid in Corpus, and then I was in the advanced math courses. So there were kids in my neighborhood who also were in those. We all carpooled together. So I was with them as well. It was 2 Indian and 1 Asian kid.
Yeah.
And I was Jewish. And then the theater kids were, I wanted to do theater, but the time slot with the advanced math course and the theater course overlapped. So I chose math and didn't end up going that route. And then when I got to high school, I don't know. I was friends with people on the swim team. Swimmers were you have this picture of like big hulking, athletic Adonises, but at my school we didn't have the best swim team, so it was just
sure.
kids who didn't play lacrosse or basketball, and a lot of women swam. It was a co-ed team. They were not cheerleaders, so it was a wholesome bunch of fun kids.
That's super interesting. I can definitely relate to that in some way because I basically grew up going to a very conservative Christian high school, and it was private, but like my parents were very lower middle class. So the reason why we even went to that school was because my mom got a job there. So we got tuition for free. We would have never been able to afford it, and it was very similar where like there were cliques, but then there was at one point where towards the end of it, thankfully, we all went on like a senior trip, and then we all realized we liked emo music and like Taking Back Sunday and all that stuff, and then we all became friends, So
yeah,
man, Latins love emo. But
Yeah.
yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 33. Yeah.
And where did you grow up, you said?
In Miami, Florida.
Miami, okay.
Yeah.
Did you find at that private school that cliques fell along economic lines, that you being a lower middle class family, did that create a divide for you?
Somewhat, but not necessarily, because towards the end, there was status for like smarter kids because it was also like a very high class educational school as well. Like you had to take a test to get in and all that stuff. And then there was also like a divide between people that were just really great at sports. They just got a free pass in. Like they didn't even have to take a test to get in. They were like, you're great at baseball, you're in. Because we
Basketball,
just wanted,
football.
yeah, basketball, football. Like we just wanted to be really good in that district. And we were, because of it.
Yeah.
But that was majority of what it was. And then ironically, there was like a subsect of Christian kids, which like we went to a Christian school, so it was very ironic that like there's a subsect of like we're the Christian guys or whatever, and it's like shouldn't we all
FCA, were they FCA? Were they Christian or like fellow? We had Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which were the Christian athletes, so they were doubly intimidating, and they got cool at the end of high school, but they made good grades. And they partied the right amount,
Yeah, that
they
sounds.
drank but didn't do drugs, and you hated them for doing everything right.
that sounds very familiar. I wouldn't know necessarily because I was a theater kid, and because of it, I was also the kind of kid where like going back to like that question of like who I sat with at the lunch table, I didn't sit next to anyone because I just didn't go to lunch. I would hide in the piano room and just write music all day. That's all I did. I would find ways to skip classes just to be in the practice room all day. But yeah, what were the first things that kind of started inspiring you? Like, what were your fandoms growing up? Your movies, television shows, music, anything?
Power Rangers and Pokemon were very formative and inspired my sculpting. Yoshi, the character Yoshi.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably made Yoshi more than any other. I've definitely made Yoshi more than any other characters. I've probably made dozens of iterations of the Yoshi character.
Yeah.
Every couple of years, I sculpt, and every couple of years, I like to make a Yoshi sculpture to kind of gauge where my skill is at, and I've improved. The last one I made was good, but I haven't made a new one in a while. Music, I liked rap in high school. I just listened to whatever my brother listened to.
Yeah.
So early on, like Aerosmith and Metallica, but moved into my own stuff. I liked Incubus and Counting Crows.
Sure.
Like, we're of the same generation.
Yeah.
So, and listened to what I thought was original music, but was still just top 40.
Oh yeah, I know, man. I've talked about this with other people before where like they're like, oh, I liked boy bands and then I moved on to Avril Lavigne, and I was like, yeah, the boy band with the guitar. Like it's the same exact thing.
You're like, oh, my taste in music is so random. Like, it's all top 40. You are scraping the thinnest layer of the top. I liked rap. What was weird is my school rap wasn't popular.
Really? That's
our
interesting.
generation loved rap.
Yeah.
And it was, I also went to, so in between Corpus and Atlanta, I spent 1 year in public school. And that was a big upper middle class public school. And they had like the goth kids.
Yeah.
Who straight up dressed like Sum 41. Right. And those are the emo kids. There were also goth kids who wore like eyeliner and they dressed like Columbine shooters.
Yeah.
And when I went to high school, there was not that. There was the one clique of music was P Groove. They really loved Widespread Panic, P Groove. They were jam band listeners, high schoolers. And they'd be like, yeah, man, we got to copy the set list from P Groove last night. And
that sounds very college almost. Like college kids would like Widespread Panic and P Groove and stuff like that.
So I went to a very fratty high school. My brother had to point it out for me. Everything operated in that very fratty sense. So they were very much imitating. And also private schools, white WASPs, especially in the South, will forever be reliving the 80s. The hairstyles, the clothing, the music, it never dies. There was, I do a joke about how many girls in my high school were named Reagan. Like they're forever, that's why preppy fashion is kind of forever stuck in that decade. So So that music also rung out. But for me, I felt weird for listening to like brand new. I didn't have
Yeah.
anyone to like share brand new with. Or
Sure.
I didn't listen much to My Chemical Romance, but like that was music that stuck out to me. I
Yeah.
love Dave Matthews via my brother. I still love Dave Matthews, and I will not apologize for it.
Yeah.
When I got to college, it wasn't until late in college that I discovered first Matt and Kim, but it was Passion Pit.
Okay.
When I discovered Passion Pit, I'm like, this is forever my favorite kind of music, and it
Okay.
still is. Synth
Dude,
pop.
you're speaking my language. That's
Yeah.
actually the kind of music that I write, is music in that genre.
Synth pop.
So yeah, very
Yeah.
synth pop piano rock kind of stuff. That's my favorite
I love
genre.
that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so like
Starfucker.
yeah.
Really love this band called Reptar. What else is in that genre?
I don't know why I haven't heard of that band. That's everything I like right there.
What,
Like
Starfucker?
Reptar.
Reptar is not synth pop, but it has elements of it. It's a rock band out of Athens.
I love
Yeah, you
that.
should listen to their stuff. I always promote them. They're
Hell yeah, dude.
way
That sounds
underrated.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big Matt and Kim fan as well. I've always loved how I don't know, man. I just love like how like simple they are, but I also really love there's like a punk rockness about them where like you listen to the album and it's great, but then you watch it live and then you're like, this makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
Like
I haven't seen them live. I missed them opening for Blink.
yeah. That sounds about right. Yeah, Blink has been doing some weird tours, man. Like Lil Wayne opening for them and all like what is going on?
I saw it was Matt and Kim opened, My Chemical Romance, and then Blink.
That, I mean,
I've
that
also-
makes more sense than a lot of what they've been doing lately.
Right.
But yeah, it's so weird to think, man, that like we're of the age where like Blink-182 is going to have a Vegas residency.
Yeah.
You know?
I saw Travis Barker
Oh
in
yeah.
Vegas. He walked in. I was staying at a hotel performing for a week, and I saw him walk in the lobby, and they were doing a residency.
Holy cow. That sounds about right, man. We're of that age. That's our David Copperfield.
You said formative movies. I loved Fight Club. I still do. But it took me a while to realize I came up in the age of American Pie,
Mhm.
and Road Trip, and Wedding Crashers, and The Hangover, of those really bro-y comedies that really
Yeah.
dehumanize women.
Mhm.
And I've learned to shake that treating women as currency kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But it is really weird looking back on that and seeing how poorly some of that stuff has aged.
Oh man, I know. I mean, Aziz Ansari talks about it in his new special, I think. Like there's like stuff that you can't say now that's in the trailer for The Hangover.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. Like it's really bad looking at that stuff now, you know.
Yeah, especially, which I don't like blanket like, oh, that's all bad, but like
Sure.
when you're 12 and watching that and thinking that's reality, it can lead to some twisted views for men and
Of
women.
course.
I'm trying to think other movies what were your TV shows and movies?
I liked a lot of stuff. My favorite was Boy Meets World, but I'm a TGIF guy, so like I liked Full House. I liked all that stuff. I'm the one guy that liked it, I guess.
That's good.
But
I like Simpsons.
Simpsons is great. Yeah,
as
that
far
was
back
a
as I
show.
remember.
That
And I
was a
watched
show I had to
Futurama.
sneak to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I watched all of it when I was in high school, and then I remember when Futurama came out, I was watching it every week as it
Yeah.
premiered. And I still think that's my second favorite show.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
Adventure Time, which I didn't start watching until I was in my late 20s, and that's
Yeah.
just it's cool. It's cool knowing one thing that I'm very happy about is being able to find new favorites
Of
as I get
course.
older.
Yeah.
Like it makes me sad that I might not ever discover a band I love as much as Passion Pit.
Yeah.
But it makes me excited when I can find a show like Adventure Time. We're like, yeah, this is like, I'm not just resting on nostalgia or overvaluing past assets.
Yeah.
Like I can find new things to like. I can broaden my tastes. And Adventure Time really opened my world to a whole new style of writing and humor and just an endless type of creativity that I draw inspiration from in a lot of what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great show. Just to move on to our next bit, what were your favorite snacks growing up?
Pop-Tarts for breakfast every morning.
Really?
every morning. That's so unhealthy in retrospect. That's worse than a Snickers bar. Twizzlers, love Twizzlers. Could eat a whole bag in a day, a pound bag of just the plain ones, not the twist and peel, just the rubbery, waxy ones. I still love them. I don't even know why. Funyuns, love Funyuns. That was a younger thing. Those were my top.
Another thing that I like to talk about on this podcast is cereal, because I feel like it's the thing that encompasses childhood in a lot of ways. So what were your favorite cereals growing up?
I did Kix. I like Kix.
Yeah.
Rice Krispies I liked. I know those are really boring answers, but those were what we were allowed to have.
The thing about Kix for me is that I can't unsee Donald Glover's joke about it.
It's so good. I repeated it to someone recently.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah, how it's the hand job of cereals.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot that line. I wasn't even thinking about that line.
Yeah, it's the hand job of cereals. It is so good, man. It's perfect. It's the best joke.
You know the rest of the joke?
Yeah, how it's...
how his mom mixed it with... He wanted Cocoa Puffs, and his mom mixed it with... She would mix like 4 little beads of it and shake it in Tupperware. And it was just a bunch of Kix with a couple Cocoa Puffs that looked like a Kanye West concert.
Yeah, so good. And then his brother would still eat it, and while he's crying, and it's just like, don't eat it. It's like a homeless guy being like, you want a piece of pizza? And then just puts it on his dick, and he's like, hey, here you go. Like, don't eat the pizza.
I liked, I think Golden Grams are way better than Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Dude, Golden Grams is great. It's very underrated. And I actually kind of agree with you, because Cinnamon Toast Crunch is great, but it's very 0 to 60. It's very 0 to 60. So you kind of have to be, at least for me, you kind of have to be in the mood for it, you know, especially now that they're putting shrimp tails in their cereal, you know, that's like kind of a bummer, you know.
I've heard of it's a rare treat, but it's outstanding. Golden Graham Rice Krispie treats. You make Rice Krispie treats, but with Golden Graham. So that's wild.
That's a great treat. Absolutely. Yeah. That's
and then later in life, I fell in love with, in college, I fell in love with Reese's peanut butter puffs.
Yeah. Good stuff. We actually every episode of this podcast, we review a box of cereal, and I just reviewed Reese's Puffs with Mandy Johnson. But just to go into our next bit, every episode of this podcast, I like to review a box of cereal, and I usually like to review a box of cereal that has something to do with my guest in some way, shape, or form. I kind of give you a spirit cereal, as it were. So I spoke with my sponsors over at Kellogg's. Now, by sponsor, I mean that I like them and I buy all of their products. And by spoke to, I mean that I tweeted them repeatedly and they never got back to me. So the cereal that I got for you is Crispix cereal. Have you had this before, Matt?
I have.
This is great. Now, this is why it reminds me of you, because it's rice on one side, corn on the other, and that reminds me of your joke structure in a lot of ways, because it is a very complex carb, but then there's just a little bit of corn in there as well to kind of sell it, you know?
Yeah, I love that.
It's perfect. But yeah, so this is a very boring box. There's like nothing going on. I'm trying to see of what we can do, because usually we always review, but there's like no characters on this box. There's like nothing for us to do.
No, but it didn't lean the other way, which is to go like the Kashi route of having like an adult, you know, like a family, a picture of like a diverse family on it, or full cartoon. It looks like the advertising team was like a deadlocked jury. You know, or like, well, we won't go childish and we won't go adult. Let's just nothing. Just nothing.
We won't even put a Bible verse on this piece of shit. Like,
it's so middle of the road. I don't even know who. You're right. It doesn't make sense who it's marketing to.
Yeah,
it's too drab to be for kids, but it's not healthy enough to be for adults. It's a good cereal, by the way.
It's great.
I do enjoy it. It's a little too sugary for me. You can actually really taste the sugar in it, like the crystals of sugar. I wish it almost had less, but it does have great texture, a lot of crunch.
Yeah. I love it, man. This is great. Hey, Crispix cereal, ladies and gentlemen, they said it couldn't be done. They were probably right, but we did it. We reviewed it. That was great, man. And then it has some ideas on the box in the back here for like Crispix Mix, which I guess is like their version of Chex Mix.
Yeah.
but which I would think might be better because you have rice and corn. You don't have to buy two separate cereals.
Who
You know,
makes checks?
I think it's the same company.
Weird that it's so. I didn't even think about it. It's so close to checks.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it literally is the exact same thing other than texture, I would say,
Mhm.
is the
And
only thing.
shape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and shape, yeah. I want to move on into what you're doing now. I want to move on into comedy. When did you start performing stand up and what kind of interested you in wanting to become a stand up comedian?
I think it was June 27th, 2011. I just it seemed like an entry path into comedy. I mean, I liked the idea of doing it. It seemed really fun. It seemed like the most accessible thing
Mhm.
for me to do. I couldn't dance. I didn't know how to act. I couldn't play any instruments. I didn't have any real talents that could take me into a career in entertainment. I kind of wanted to write. I love the idea of like writing a movie about Jewish summer camp. And I was talking to a comedy writer, and they're like, just try an open mic, just go do live comedy.
Yeah.
Because I was really inspired by Donald Glover, the way he
Yeah.
was a writer and comedian, and how those two paths intermingled to make.
Man, I hate to interrupt you, Matthew, but that is 100% the person that inspired me to do what I'm doing as well.
Yeah,
So I completely relate to you
which
because
is
I started off as a musician and always wanted to do stand up. And then I'm also an actor as well. But literally, when I went to LA and got my manager, she was like, do improv. I couldn't afford improv. So I started doing stand up because it was free. And then I just
mhm,
fell in love with it. And I've been doing it for 6 years.
wow.
And yeah, I fell into it backwards essentially, but literally the same exact thing. Just so inspired by like you can do everything. Like you don't have to, if your mind is in these different places, let them wander. You don't have to
Mhm.
stick to this one specific thing if you're not always feeling it. But
Renaissance
anyway,
thinking.
you can move on.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Donald Glover didn't keep doing stand up, which
I
is weird
know,
because no one
man.
views him as that. I saw him live, went to a Childish Gambino show in 2011, a couple months before I started. And he did stand up top. And then he started doing music. And I was like, I just wanted to see the stand up. I'm not here for the
Yeah.
music. Music's fine. But like the stand up was so fun to watch. I would have watched an hour of that.
Yeah.
It made it seem very accessible. He also had a story that I found really interesting. I didn't realize you were allowed to talk about that kind of stuff. He talked about going to an art school, and mostly going from a
Yeah.
black public school to mostly white art school. I was like, I didn't know you were allowed to talk about that.
Yeah.
It was so vulnerable and honest, and the feelings of exclusion. I thought you were supposed to talk about drinking and why your wife is ugly. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know that you could be so new age, and I found that really, really inspiring.
There's
And
also a through line in Childish Gambino as well, because he was getting a lot of heat because people were like, you can't rap about writing for Tina Fey. And he was like, yeah, I can.
that's so
So
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
He
because
really.
the only thing that he does that rap does frequently is boast. And that's it. But his form of boasting is I have Emmys and like I also have six other jobs, so if you're better than me, you better be good at what you do, you know?
Yeah, yeah. He has a level of personal in his comedy and his rap that I still strive for. Of like,
Yeah.
my goal as a comedian is to not be holding back details of my life or avoiding talking about things for the sake of people might not be able to relate. Of like, I think it's really great when you can tell a story whose details don't relate to most of the crowd, but the emotions do.
Yeah.
It's the disparity between the story you're telling and the proximity of the connection to the feelings of usually alienation or isolation that come from it. And he did that so well,
Agreed.
so well. Really awesome. I just started doing. I think I saw a flyer for an open mic. It was a culmination of events. Seeing him live, going to Israel, talking to there was a girl on my Israel trip who went on who majored in writing with him at NYU.
Oh wow.
And she talked about how he got started and she told me, just go do an open mic, go find an open mic to do it. That's all comedians start. And when I got back, I was like, I should do that. And then I saw a flyer. I didn't even look it up. I didn't even like go out looking. I just saw a flyer. I was like, oh, that's clearly a sign that I should just do it. And I think I was busy that Monday, but then I came back the next Monday and I tried it. And the first set went well. The second set went well. I bombed for a few months. And then I realized you're allowed to repeat jokes. And
Oh,
I also
okay.
realized that you just do it every night as much as possible and you get better.
Yeah.
When that clicked for me, I was just addicted and could not stop doing it. Everything else fell apart. And I haven't slowed down that much since.
Yeah, man. I mean, I completely agree with you in that sense. Like when I started in Los Angeles, which is a weird place
So
to
tough.
start, you
I don't
know,
think I would have survived.
but this is the thing is like it really worked for my personality because my personality was looking at people and seeing that everyone was better than me. So my mentality was like, you either get good or get out.
Yeah.
And it made me get really good really quickly, or at
Was
least really good in the sense of like for what the amount of time I had been doing it. I don't think what I was year one is even close to how I am now, which,
mhm.
every comic would say the same, but it was addicting, man, because you would see, you kind of look at it like a math equation or a science experiment. Like you're kind of just like, okay, this joke works in this kind of a room, or it works with this kind of a crowd, or whatever the case.
These three jokes are all funny, but if I take out the middle one, the result is more laughter, even though it's less jokes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you started in Atlanta then?
No, I started in Houston.
In
I went to
Houston.
college in Houston.
And then from there you were just doing open mics and bombing for a year or 2 years, or
So I preface this with I don't want anyone to hear this and think it's a standard path or even a good way to go. Timelines all work different. I'm nearing 10 years now, and there are people who had nothing going for 8 or 9 years who started when I did, who in the last year were finally noticed and are flying past me.
Mhm.
And that is a more traditional path, and that is more what to strive for. So
Yeah.
that is my preface to all that. But I started doing comedy, and I was bombing for a couple months, and then I started just getting in a real groove. And I wasn't super consistent yet, and I was probably pretty hacky.
Yeah.
But a year in, I was performing at a club. There was a club there that just put me up every weekend. I got to do 10, 15-minute guest spots 2 times a weekend
Oh,
in
that's
front of
great.
full crowds. And then I
Yeah.
was doing every show in town. I was traveling a little bit. I would get feature work. And no, I wasn't featuring in Dallas, but I was working the clubs already. And just getting absurd amounts of stage time for a 1 year comic. And 1 year in, I won Houston's Funniest Person. And then a month later, I won the other contest.
That's great.
About 13 months into comedy. And then I started working the clubs in Texas. Didn't deserve to be. And that got me at the 1.5 year mark, I showcased for Comedy Central. And by an insane amount of luck, that got me my first television credit, an agent, a manager, and inspired me to move out to LA a little over 2 years in,
Yeah.
which was a bad move. It
Okay.
worked out, but I came with an ego thinking that I was of that level,
Okay.
of that late night comic ready to work the clubs level. I moved to a location that was dead center triangulation between the Hollywood Improv, the Laugh Factory, and the Comedy Store. And I lived
Mhm.
there for 4 years and was never a regular at any of them.
I literally worked when I lived in LA. I worked at the UPS store right in the middle.
Oh,
So
I've been to that one on Hollywood.
yeah, on Hollywood Boulevard. And so
Yeah.
I would just walk to every club after work. And I would
Yep.
just do
Down the street
sets.
from the train, the hot dog train station, and the
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've
and
been
also
there.
back when Meltdown Comics was a thing as well. I would
Yep.
I would sometimes I'd do a
Another
drop in
room
there.
I never got up. I never got booked on the Wednesday show. That is probably the
Really?
biggest chip in my shoulder I'll ever wear. Never. I hung out there every week. If I was in town and not booked somewhere else, I was at Meltdown. It was the shortest walk from my house, and it was the coolest. And you experienced it, and it's so hard to explain what Meltdown was. The only thing that I've heard of like it is Rafifi,
Yeah.
years prior in New York. But Meltdown was
This is my favorite place.
wild.
This is my favorite
Wednesdays,
place.
oh my God. Kumail and Jonah hosted, and Jeselnik would pop in to run his jokes for his show the next day. And you had Pete Holmes and John Mulaney and Hannibal Buress on a regular rotation, and
Yeah.
Rory Scovel, and then all this new talent that the clubs were overlooking and just fresh and spoke to you. you, a 25-year-old, it was like, no one else would get these jokes, man. This is so current. They're talking about the podcast Serial, and they're doing an impression of the host of Serial. A podcast is 3 weeks old, and it's killing because everyone's here is cool and listens to it.
Yeah, I love that place so much, man. That was my home when I first started, man. I started in 2015, December of 2015, and that was my place. I was friends with Kyle Clark, who was the intern at Nerdist, and
Friend of mine as well.
Yeah, he's great. I love him. I've had him on the podcast. He's great. And then he just introduced me to a bunch of people. And then I also met Matt Bennett, who had a show with Moses Storm. It was like a variety show called This Show Is Your Show.
Oh,
yeah, you remember that show?
Yeah, I remember that.
And one of their...
I remember Moses hosted one time. They did a show. He goes, guys, this is really embarrassing. This is a clip of me doing comedy for the first time. This is me doing comedy for the first time. And he just turns on a video of Steve Harvey opening things. I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
That's so funny.
And it cuts back to Moses. He goes, I was scared. I was scared of those motherfuckers. Sorry, I interrupted your story.
No. That's well worth it. Worth it. Yeah, that kid is so freaking funny, man. I love his style so much.
So hardworking.
Yeah, I agree, man. He's so good at what he does. But one of their comedians dropped for one of their shows, and they DM'd me and was like, hey, Kyle says you're funny or whatever. Like, you want to come on? And I was like, okay. And I got super lucky. And that's how I literally coasted through all of my comedy showcases that I ever did for the rest of the time that I was in LA, because for some strange reason, I did okay for 7 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. It was such a status symbol. My girlfriend does comedy now, and I forget about this stuff, but those status symbol showcase shows where like that guy's booked on that, they're legit now.
Yeah.
Mateo Lane we had on our podcast, and he was talking about if you get booked on Cabin, he was like, oh, if you did Cabin on a Monday night, you might as well have done late night. Your name was on the poster for Cabin. Every booker in town's trying to get you on their show now. And what a rat race.
Yeah, I know.
Also, what a thrill when it was going your way.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
And I came from Houston, where I was such a big fish in a small pond, because people came and went so quickly that, there wasn't that big of a queue of people. And I just thought I was that good. I was like, well, Houston's the fourth biggest city. And if I'm one of the strongest new comics here, then I'll probably be proportionate to that in LA. And it's like, no, you're not even top fucking 60%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you're saying right there is like the reason why, for my personality, why it works so well that I started there. Because comedy to me, man, since the beginning, since when I was playing music and an actor and all that stuff, and I wasn't a comedian, there was nothing more big to me. Like, I was such a nerd about comedy, and still am. It's the thing that I nerd out about. Comedians are more rock stars than actual rock stars are to me.
Yeah.
And they still are, and they always will be. And because of that, that's why I was like, man, you either get good or get out, because everybody's better than you. And that may or may not have been true, but it's the reason why I was getting better, you know, because I wasn't going to let myself be a hack. Because I already knew what that looked like, and I hated it. And I was like, I'm never going to be this because I don't like it. But it's so interesting that you were talking about like how you wouldn't recommend doing it the way that you did. Is it just because of how like the ego side of it got to you, or?
Yeah, I wasn't a slouch. Like I had a decent set. It wasn't like I was a bad comic. And I thought everyone hated me because I was a bad comic. And it took me a long time to realize, like, no one really hated my comedy. It was just my attitude, my entitlement. I was so openly frustrated with not getting on shows and probably disrespecting other comedians as a result. I also knew that I rose so quickly in Houston that if I stuck around, I could only slide down. I could only get my position usurped by a newer comic, and getting out of there was maybe in my way an avoidance of that. But if I had stuck around, maybe that. I mean, I just think comedy is about humiliation. And here's the thing, in the long term, I'm also grateful. LA caused me to hate myself in a way that really helped my act. The one thing that really started getting different about my jokes in LA was that I started just the self-loathing came out in my jokes, and this fear of how people perceive me started becoming real words, and you know, those insecurities and those kind of, you know, that roast battling yourself came from a really real pace. And that's when my comedy started getting good. That's when stuff started, you know, that was the stuff that still online people react to very strongly, of just strongly self-effacing, being very vulnerable and raw, and being, you know, prostrating yourself before the crowd. That's where I think my best comedy comes from. And I don't know if I would have learned that somewhere else. I had to have that massive ego check to learn how to write that way. And then I was doing fine. I got my half hour. I got my first late night set in LA. It was just that rejection from my peers, because it was also the era of meltdown.
Yeah.
Right. The clubs are booked up. The clubs are booked up with very strong comics, but also just a lot of hacks and a lot of people who've been around for 10 or 20 years and know the booker, and they're not interested in putting in new talent. They're interested in just not making enemies and just booking the people they've been booking. And you get that kind of old guard of has-beens who aren't working on new material. And that's what the alt scene, there's cycles of it, was created out of, and that was meltdown. It was, here are the guys overlooked by the clubs who are doing something really good and really well. And that at that time was a pushback against the real broiness of places like the Laugh Factory. We were 10 years within 10 years of the Dane Cook era and the imitators.
Right.
So I was perhaps viewed as more of that type of comic. So they didn't want to book guys like me. And I was not yet established enough to get in the clubs. So I felt like Channing Tatum in 21 Jump Street, where it's like, I worked so hard to become this version of cool, and this version of cool isn't cool anymore.
Right. Yeah, that makes plenty of sense, man. I mean, as you were saying that, like you were saying that whole like quasi Dane Cook era kind of stuff, like I would never consider you that style, like at all. I mean, the only way that I would consider it is like at face value, where it's like you're an attractive dude that is talking about pop culture and like, you know, whatever. But I mean, you're not of that style whatsoever, in my opinion.
I had a more abrasive act when I got to LA, because it was a lot of bar shows, and the only way to get attention is by, you know, making fun of women and
oh boy,
kind of a mean-spirited comedy, punching down.
Yeah.
And I had also, you said at face value, but when you're in LA and not getting up very much, people don't even know your act. They just know you. They just know seeing you at the back of shows where you hang out every week. So
I guess that's the difference between me and a lot of people, is I try not to look at them at face value. I try to see who they are as people.
yeah, but assumptions are always made. Yeah, and again, I'm grateful for all of it. And there's no single person I would condemn. It was my own shortcomings I had to face, and I resent having had to face them, but I'm happy I did.
Hey man, I am too, because if it means that you're a better comic, then that's great. Yeah. You know, I think that that's great. I want to ask you, what are some of like notable bombs that you've had?
One that stung a lot was, I had told my boss, I was 2 years into my job in Houston, 2 years into comedy. And I sat down with my boss and said, I am going to move to LA. I just took a vacation weekend to film my first TV set. I have a manager there. I'm going to move out there. I would love to keep working for you part-time. He goes, keep working, you know, full-time. And I said, okay, you sure? He goes, yeah, this will be, we can work this out. And it was very generous of him. So I packed up my things and I drove to, I was going to drive to LA. I ended up driving to Austin. I lived there for 2 months doing a little movie where I had very few lines, but it took 2 months of filming to do. And then I was going to move to LA, but then I got in this comedy competition that lasted 3 weeks in San Francisco. So I drove to San Francisco from Austin, which was 3 days. And I get there, I don't have an apartment. Everything I own is in my car. I park at my friend's place, and I live there for 2 weeks. And then the last night of the competition, I get last place of the finalists, just have a whiff of a set at a casino. And this is all 4 days after getting fired. So I left Houston with a job, and before I even got to LA, I had lost it. I had made a big mistake at work, and I had to go. And it was, again, everything I owned was in my car. I had no home. and I had now no job. And I drive down from San Francisco after losing the next day, and I have a show that night. My manager got me at the West Side Comedy Theater, one of Sarah Mello's shows, who's a great comedy booker. She books a couple weekly shows, always really good lineups. And my manager really pulled some strings to get me on that show. It was a new material night. I think it was Neil Brennan's new material show. Mm-hmm. And I drive down, 7 hours because you hit the traffic wrong from the Bay down to LA.
Yeah.
And I park, I go in and do the show, and I actually treat it like a new material night instead of what it was, my first real show in LA. And just whiffed it. Should have done, solid material and wrote it off as new. And the booker, Sarah, didn't book me again for like 2 or 3 years. And I finally did a show, and she saw it. She was like, "Oh, you don't suck as much anymore." But that one was just like, it was just a kick in the nuts after a kick in the nuts after a kick in the nuts. Fired, lose, homeless. Like,
Jesus. Yeah, that's crazy. Oh my gosh.
It was my first set in LA.
Yeah, I know. That's why it's
first like living in LA.
Yeah, and that's kind of like how people see you in a lot of ways, when you're doing that set, which is like, yeah, those first couple of sets are very, very important. You have to bring your A material and have to pretend that no one knows who you are,
Yep.
because people are watching and they're going to remember that you suck or whatever. And even if you don't, and you were just trying new material. We're talking about bombs, but I also want to talk about the positive. What is some of the greatest moments you've had in your career so far?
A lot of wonderful moments. A more recent or a more formative?
I mean, any that you'd like. Formative would be great if you have one of those.
One that was that felt like an ascension to a new tier was I did JFL New Faces 2015, mm-hmm. and I wasn't performing at the clubs in LA. I was doing okay, I was doing fine, but my set went fine. But Jeff Ross was hosting the International Roast Battle Tournament.
Yeah,
started with started with 16 people, worked its way down to 8 to final. And I'd only ever done one roast battle before, to Sean Leary in the Belly Room, and I had lost pretty badly. And what they do for JFL is, if you're a new face, they always try to find you one extra set on the festival. And the booker messaged me and said, "I couldn't find you a set, but you want to do a roast battle against Jack Knight?" And I was like, I can't say no. I'm not going to say no to any opportunity because I don't want to look weak. So I said yes. And Jack Knight and we sat together and just wrote our jokes together and be like, I don't want to win. I don't want to move on. You know what I mean? Neither do you. So let's just both kind of phone it in and just have some jokes. And we both bombed. We both bombed so badly that Wanda Sykes said, "What is the point of any of this?" She was one of the judges. She was like, "This was bad. Neither of you were good. This whole idea is stupid." And I beat him because I just didn't lose as hard as he did.
Right.
And what I did notice was the crowd there. It was the last show. Montreal JFL is the biggest comedy festival at least in this continent. Mm-hmm. And there's, dozens of shows a day, all different headliners or podcasts, and the biggest names in comedy come every year. And this was the last event of the night. There was nothing else going on. So every comic, every agent, and the festival goers who stayed up late came to this show. And you look out in the crowd and you just see every comic is there. You see Dave Chappelle, you see Chris D'Elia, you see Olivia Munn, you see Michael Fassbender in the crowd. And it was just hot. It was the event.
Everyone's favorite comic, Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just joking with you, man.
Yeah. Carrie Elwes, or whatever his name, the Princess Bride guy.
That's amazing. That would be so jarring to see if you're just roasting and you just see the guy from the Princess Bride.
So I realized, I should take this seriously. So I do the next night, and I actually really try and really write this hard, and I win, which means I'm halfway through, which I'm now down to the final 4. You know what I mean? You win twice in a bracket, you're down to the final 4. So I was like, shoot, I really better try. And I grabbed all the comics I could, and we wrote together. And then that third night was against K. Trevor Wilson. And I just got really lucky and just happened to catch the upper hand and keep it and win that battle narrowly. And everyone was there. Everyone at the festival was there. I go to the after party. People just, my heroes were coming up to me and being like, "Hey, enjoyed your stuff tonight." Like Taryn Killam was like, "Hi, I'm Taryn. I really like your stuff." It's like, yeah, I know who you are.
Yeah.
And that meant I was down to the final two. So I became a finalist, and I lost the next night horribly, just crashed and burned, just so bad. But just that third night was a night where everyone saw me and saw that I could write jokes.
Yeah, man. I mean, do you like roast comedy as much as you like regular stand-up?
No, I like stand-up more, but I appreciate roast comedy.
Because I mean, it's perfect for your genre of joke writing, because like some of the best roast jokes I've ever heard are the ones that you've written. And so, yeah, like one of my favorite jokes, I mean, granted, of course,
see if it's one I wrote or a friend wrote and I got to take it from him. Let's see.
I mean, it seems very Matthew Broussard, at least to me. And it was about how he has his own gravitational pull, and that's why his career is going nowhere.
Thank you.
Dude, that's the best roast joke I've ever heard in my life.
Thank you. It was a 3-part joke. I sat at a table, and I remember Esther Steinberg and Rob Gleason contributed heavily to that joke. So
yeah,
credit to them as well. But it was a 3-part joke that we were all just kind of theorizing about. So I can't take full credit, but thank you very much.
Of course.
I wanted to write from a scientific level. I was learning about relativity at the time, and I thought it would be very fun to,
Yeah, man. And one thing you can definitely take credit for is telling John Mayer to his face that he's a douchebag.
That I'll take full credit for. Every word of that. Yes.
And not only that, the retaliation to what he said of being like, "Oh, you have great hits, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift." I mean, dude, I
had that joke in the past. I had never met him, and there's no way you would believe this from the outside, because I wouldn't either. But I had, I heard John Mayer was doing it. I'm such a fan of him.
Yeah.
I also love his comedy. I would listen to his comedy in college because he tells jokes between, and I thought it was so funny how he could be so cocky and funny. I didn't think you were allowed to be that high of status and still funny. It's kind of the reason I like Tosh as well.
Yeah.
But we're backstage, and they're about to bring me out. They're going to bring me out first. And I say to Brian Moses, I was like, "I have some jokes about John. Can I do them up top?" Like, they're like about to say my name. He goes, "Yeah. Yeah." So I go out there, and they go, Matthew Broussard went, Jeff says, "Matthew, I heard you have some stuff to say to John." And John truly didn't know it was coming. I had barely prepared it, but I had kind of two jokes in my mind. And I say the first one, and he unknowingly set me up for the second one. So when he goes, "What songs are you going to play?" I was like, "Oh, Lord, you stepped in the octagon." The next joke that I was going to say anyway. Now it looks like it's off the top of my brain.
Yes.
It was such a gleeful moment. I was just like, wow, that's a gift. That's just
one of the greatest moments in roast battle history right there.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's so good, dude. I mean, it's funny. You came to Miami, I think it was right before COVID hit, and you were doing a mic, and I was there as well. Joe Bob was running it. Travis was running it. Everybody calls him Joe Bob because that's his character name. But he was running the room, and he was like, "Oh, Matthew Broussard's coming." And to the people that didn't know who you were, I was like, "Let me tell you all of his jokes and why he's the funniest guy ever." Because,
thank you.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, if I'm a fan of someone, I'm a fan of someone. And like, they're just, they're my favorite people. But I want to ask you these last 2 questions, and then I'm going to let you go. You can answer them however you want. You can answer them comedically, vulnerably. There's no wrong answer. So the first question is, what advice would you give to yourself as a child now?
Learn how to dance. It's a great
help.
skill.
Yeah.
It's a great skill to have, and will give you confidence in everything you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Learn how to dance. Take a dance class.
That's so helpful for sure, man. Being an awkward kid at dances is not fun at all.
If you can, you don't need anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have 3 moves, I'd probably have more STDs by now if I could dance, though. So maybe it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Dancing is the gateway to STDs.
That's why they banned it in that town in Footloose.
Exactly. That's why they banned it.
After the chlamydia outbreak.
Yeah. And the last question is, what do you think that that kid would think of who you are now, considering all of your successes, considering all these moments that we've talked about throughout your career? What would they think of you?
Oh man, I wish I had a joke answer, but I think he'd be pretty happy with me.
Yeah.
I think he'd be pretty happy because I never considered, I thought I was going to be like a math teacher or an engineer. I didn't think that I was going to have other options. So I'd like to think pretty cool. A lot more back hair.
Yeah.
Than he was expecting. That young, I was like, oh, wow, where'd that come from? I didn't think my dad didn't have any chest hair. Why do I have shoulder hair?
Yeah.
You know, so I think that would probably bother him a little bit. It's like, yeah, but you can shave it, you know, it's fine. And women don't mind as much as you think. But yeah, career-wise, cool.
The thing that I always love reminding people when I have them guest on this podcast and when I ask them these questions is that it's super important to not lose that sense of childlike wonder, because keeping the magic alive for that kid is what is really going to propel you forward, because we are in an industry that does not believe in the magic of what our dreams were when we were kids. You know, and so you just have to constantly remind yourself of that childlike wonder. But this has been such a delight, man. What an honor to talk to you. Where can people find you online?
At Monday Punday on all social media. You can listen to my podcast called She Does Stand Up Too with my girlfriend Laura Sogar on all podcast platforms. You can watch my comedy on YouTube. Just type in my name. And I have my sculptures if you want to follow my sculpture page, it's at Cockblock Gargoyles on Instagram. Just sculptures.
That's so great. For me, you can find me on Instagram at Mike Valdez, on Twitter at I am Mike Valdez. You can go to whoismikevaldez.com to find out the answer to that question. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. Bye, besties.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank
Good
you,
episode.
Man. Yeah, man. This was super fun.
We're gonna hop off and film this stupid audition, but I will see you soon.
Are you doing an acting audition?
Yeah.
Nice.
This is a weekly affair for me.
Are you getting better at acting?
I'm getting better. I'm booking 1 or 2 things a year, which is fine. Maybe slightly higher than that.
That makes me more depressed, man, because you're funny and good looking. I was hoping you were a bad actor.
I am. Yeah. I auditioned for so much when I got to. I've been talking about that on stage, but I moved to LA, and it was that Mitch Hedberg thing of like, so we're just going to assume you can act as well. I can't. It's weird how an applied math degree doesn't prepare you for the world of acting as well as you think.
I love it.